Good morning, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. A very warm welcome to 24 Hours of PARS Summit Preview. We're thrilled you could join us today for David Mauri's session, Agile Data Warehousing Start to Finish. This 24 Hours of PARS event consists of 24 consecutive live webcasts. Sessions will be recorded and posted online soon after the event. My name is Alex Whittles, a SQL Server BI consultant at Purple Frog, and I have a few quick introduction slides before I hand over the reins to David. He will then speak for 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll move on to Q&A where you can ask any questions you may have. Next slide, please, David. If you're having any issues, please type your issue into the question pane and someone will assist you. To maximize your screen, use the Zoom buttons located on the top of the presentation window. Feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A field at any time. The questions pane is located on the right-hand side of your screen. Once we get to the Q&A portion of the session, I'll read off your questions to the speaker. Note that there will be a short evaluation at the end of the session. Your feedback's really important to us, so please do take a moment to complete it. It'll show up on your screen after the session. I'd like to take a moment to thank our event partners. The staging of 24 Hours of PARS would not be possible without their support and dedication. They're the reason why this event is available free of charge. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsors, Microsoft and Dell Software. Next slide, please.
It's coming.
Next, as you may all know, this 24 Hours of PARS is a preview of PARS Summit 2014, the largest conference for SQL Server and BI professionals. With over 5,000 attendees representing 2,000 companies from 52 countries, Summit is a time to share, connect, and learn with your peers and industry partners. PARS Summit is not only a week of intensive learning and knowledge sharing that will offer strategic insights, it's also a time to network and rub shoulders with industry experts. Taking place in Seattle from November the 4th to the 7th, PARS Summit will feature over 190 world-class sessions across 5 topic tracks. These 24 Hours of PARS sessions provide a mere glimpse as to what you might expect from PARS Summit. Find out more at parssummit.com, and if you register by September 26th using discount code 24HOP14, you get $200 off the registration fee. And now, please allow me to present the speaker of the hour, David Mauri.
Thank you, and hi also from my side to everyone. Welcome to the session on Agile Data Warehousing. So let's move directly to the slides because we have 45 minutes only. A lot of slides, a lot of things to say about this really interesting topic. So this is let's have a quick overview of the agenda. So we are going to discuss about what is really a data warehouse and why Agile is the only way to succeed, in my opinion. And then we will discuss about how engineering the data warehouse will help and support the Agile methodology. And of course, engineering means applying design pattern, automating the pattern, and of course, introducing testing in the methodology we are using. So let's try to answer the first question, that is, what is a data warehouse really? So before answering that, we must realize, and I'm sure all of you agree on that, that we are living in the data-driven age. So we are gathering data, we are transforming it into information, from information we derive knowledge, and ultimately from knowledge we will take decision. So that's the important life cycle of data, from data to decision. And so if we have to support this new age, isn't the data warehouse an old thing? Well, actually we have big data technology, in-memory technology, and all this new stuff, new and no-sql databases. So why we can just replace the data warehouse? Well, actually I would answer we could, if the data warehouse would be a simple container of data. But in my opinion, data warehouse is much more than this. So if we start from the point from seeing the data like water, I think that everyone agrees that if data is like water, we would never drink that water you are seeing in the slide. Untested, untrusted, even not so clean, and uncertified. So we have a kind of a little problem to solve to be able to drink fresh water, so to be able to drink data that is cleansed, tested, and certified. So if data is like water, how come or how a manager or a decision maker would take a decision based on data of which he doesn't know the source, he doesn't trust, he doesn't know if it is correct, and more in general, how can he trust the data? So that's the main point, in my opinion, of a data warehouse, to create a place where managers and decision makers are anyone, and keep in mind that decision makers are everyone in today's company. I saw company applying a correct data warehousing API solution and moving the decision from the managers only to everyone in the company, and thus changing the company in a way is much more agile, is much more responsive to new business requirement. So everyone today in a company will take a decision somehow. So we need to be able to feed these people with correct, trusted, and updated data so that they can take conscious decision. That's the main point in my opinion. So now the answer is quite easy in my eyes, because a data warehouse is nothing more and nothing less than trust. Data warehouse is the place where people will trust the data inside to transform data into information, knowledge, and finally decision. So from a physical point of view, given that this is the idea that we have to bring on with when we design a data warehouse, we have to design it so that it will store consolidated data coming from the whole company. We have to design it so that it will be a place where we can cleanse, verify, and certify data, where we will be able to keep historical data, where, if possible, we will store what is called as a kind of graal of data, the single version of truth. And this will be the main foundation of a BI solution. And actually, Forrester defines the data warehouse as the backbone of a BI solution. And of course, this is the backbone of a BI solution, and we also want to help our people to be able to do self-service BI, to be able to do data science, and all the new things that a data warehouse will enable them to do. We also want them to have user-friendly data models, so that they can concentrate only on the data, they can only focus on the data, and leave all the technical details and difficulties to us, to the technical guys. So that's the main architecture of a modern data environment, putting all the things on the table. And what we are going to describe today is the enterprise data warehouse, so the point where everything will be put from master data to structured data to unstructured data to data coming from data scientists. So the enterprise data warehouse will be the single point of access to all the information in our company. And of course, this brings some challenges in order to be able to do that. And luckily, we have some background knowledge about what happened in the development world, where they faced the same problem years ago, and they came up with the idea of be agile. And also, this can be applied, in my opinion, in the data warehouse and more broadly in the BI world. And of course, this is not only my opinion, but also Gartner thinks about things the same. Forrester is pushing this idea quite strongly in the last year. So before trying to figure out how Agile methodology can help a data warehouse, let's do a reality check first of all. Since the enterprise data warehouse is the trusted container of all the company data, of course it becomes quite obvious that it cannot be just created out of nowhere. I say in one day. I mean, it cannot be created like a monolithical project. It has to grow and evolve with the business needs. First of all, because business needs changes every day. So it's not possible to do something that is fixed in time and will stay as we made it in the first time forever. We have to do something that is able to grow and evolve. Plus, the reality is that it will never be 100% complete, because companies will find a new way to sell their product, to sell their services, to evaluate cost. So the data warehouse and the BI solution should follow this new way in which they calculate things, and so it has to grow with them. So actually, this is a very famous picture I'm showing to you, and it shows what usually happens in a BI project. So we start from what the customer asks to us, which of course is something not really feasible, or maybe that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And we understand something maybe different. Of course, we plan for something even more different, just because we try, of course, to try to prevent problems from happening. So maybe we do something a little bit different in order to help the customer to avoid problems in future. And the things goes on until we reach, of course, in several stages. So the documentation, what was deployed, you see everything is different here. We reach the ultimate point where we understand what the customer really needs. So something simple, usually, that really helps them to do what they need to do in order to move their business on. So how we can avoid all these steps that, of course, make the solution more expensive, more complex to maintain, more difficult to be changed, so it doesn't really allow us to make it grow together with the company. So let's start from this statement. Gartner did some research and found that 50% of the requirements change in the first year of a BI project. So this is what we have to face, and what is the reality. And how the Agile Principles can help us in order to be able to cope with this situation. First of all, the first principle is that we should do what is called a small design up front, or prototyping. So we will start immediately, just after a couple of days of meetings, or doing a small analysis, small design up front, and create a prototype. Then we will start to deliver this prototype that will grow at some point to the final solution, to be the final solution, deliver it quickly and deliver it frequently. Because this will start to deliver value to the user, and also the user can start to give us feedback on what we gave to them. So preventing problem about defining what he really needs, or what he knows about what he can have from a BI solution. For example, if a user always uses the report, he may not know the existence of pivot table. This is not an example made just for the sake of the example, but it's something happened to me. Users that never use the pivot table, so they really never imagined they could do things that are much more flexible than reports. So we need the end user to be part of the development team, and their feedback is really a key part of the success of the solution, because they will grow with the solution, and the solution will grow with them. We have to go hand in hand with the end user and the customer, so they will really be part of the team. And all these things I've just said can be summarized in a really, really nice and small sentence. Embrace changes. This is the main mantra of the Agile. Embrace changes. Be able to accept any changes as they come and react to them. So, of course, there are much more detail about this principle, and they can be found in the Agile Manifesto website. And here is the link where you can have access to the 12 main statements that they wrote years ago, and that we are trying to bring to BI. Of course, this statement I just described bring challenges to the way we create a BI solution. And of course, one of the main challenges is deliver quickly and fast. How we can be able to deliver quickly and fast while keeping a high quality, because we just said that the data warehouse is trust. And you know it's really hard to get trust and it's really easy to lose it. So how we can keep high quality, so in this I mean how we can keep the trust of the user using our solution, no matter who's doing the work, because if we have to be able to deliver quick and fast, maybe we have to scale out our team really quickly. So how we can add people that maybe never worked with us before without lowering the quality of the solution so much that people will not trust it anymore. And how we can really embrace changes, because this is a nice sentence to say, but it's much more difficult to do than to say it. Because the challenge behind the scene of this simple sentence is that we don't have to introduce bugs. So we have to create the solution, we have to engineer, and this is a really important word, engineer the solution in order to be able to change the smallest part possible, and when possible, use automatic testing to preserve data and assure quality. So we simply have to introduce some tools, some methodologies, some best practices in order to be able to make sure that these challenges are correctly handled. And how we can do that? It's really important to understand that be agile means is something different than have a anarchy in our team. So agility is the ability to work quickly, deliver fast, deliver frequently. This it's really near from a team management point of view to anarchy, because we can deliver quickly if everyone does what he thinks should be done. Of course, this will, if we just follow that way, we probably end having a team of people that work in a different way, and it's hard at some point to maintain the solution. So engineering will help us to make sure that everyone will apply well-known models, that we have to define, apply, and enforce rules like naming convention, like things that should be done and should be not techniques that should not be used. And of course, a lot of help will come from automation. We should automate as much as we can, because of course this will help us to make sure that everyone do the work in the very same way. And then of course we have to measure the quality of the result, measure the data that is produced by, let's say, our integration services package, and of course test the solution before releasing it to the end user. And from an engineering perspective, I'm now going to tell you what we use inside SolidQ Italy. I've been doing more than 20 BI solutions using Agile approach. So we came up with a sort of a book, a small book, of best practices, things that should be done and should not be done, tools, naming convention that I'm going to share with you. Of course, in this session, we'll just give a glimpse of them, and in the workshop I'm going to do in Seattle, we'll go all through them in detail. And one of these rules is that we will always favor Kimball approach for user-facing models. So behind the scenes, we can do whatever we want. We can use Data Vault, we can use Inmon, we can create new way of handling data behind the scenes. So in what we will call, you will see it, the staging area. But when we start to give data to the end user, it's mandatory for us to favor Kimball approach, because it's simple, so we need to be able to help the end user to understand the data and not the model, so we want them to focus on the data, and so we'll focus on fact, measures, and dimension. And another mandatory statement we say to everyone working with us is that we have to use a lot of views in order to reduce friction between layers. We have the definition of layers within a BI solution, that basically we have the source layer, the producer layer, where we, from a logical point of view, of course, we put all database where the data where we have the source data. Then we move the source data into the staging area, and there is a layer in between these source and staging systems. And everything that crosses a layer must go through a view. Why? This is a simple application of the information hiding principle, again taken from development best practices, where we try to use views in order to hide complexity from other layers. So the source has some complexity, the staging has some complexity, the data warehouse has some complexity. But the data warehouse should not be affected by the complexity of the other. So we really try to make sure that we can have, for the example I've just made, up to 3 teams working in parallel, one that work on the data source, one that works on the staging area, and one that works on the data warehouse area, that can work together in parallel, simply assuring one to each other that they will work through the filter of views, so that if someone in the staging area needs to change the table or refactor a view, they can do that without having to break anything in the other layer. So this is really, really important. It's a simple statement, it's a really simple rule, but it's really important. Plus, we have defined, and this is something I will really show in detail in the Seattle workshop, all the well-known ETL patterns that we've been using, we have found on the web. So of course the most well-known are the slowly changing dimension, or the incremental or partition load. Plus we also try to follow the principle of divide et impera, means that we try to create more than one integration services solution. For example, one that brings data from the sources to the staging, and one that brings the staging to the data warehouse. And we will favor the creation of a lot of small integration services packages. Again, this following the original idea of being able to change the smallest piece possible. So you see now how the idea that I described in the beginning, so the philosophy, the methodology that the Agile Principle tell us, is now applied from a practical point of view following some engineering best practices. And for example, in the last revision of our methodology, we create at least 5 databases. One for the staging area, one to hold all the configuration, one to hold all the logs produced, one for the metadata, and one for the data warehouse. This may seems to have a lot of database, but actually is made such in a way that, for example, we can also have different backup and restore strategies for the data warehouse or the configuration or the staging. So again, everything is made in order to have small pieces that works together. And now I spoke about design pattern, but since this is a well-known terminology in the development field, I just want to be sure that everyone agrees on what a design pattern is, or the definition of design pattern, which is nothing more than a general reusable solution to a commonly occurring problem within a given context. So, for example, pattern are the partition load. And what I would like to do, and what we are able to do within our team, is to go to any guys in the team and tell him, okay, from an architectural point of view, I want to have the fact table loaded using the partition load pattern. And he is able to apply that definition with following the engineering approach with some naming convention or rules and everything I said before, to any table I'm asking him. So we can really work like a, people building a skyscraper or a ship or anything big in the real world. So it's a team of people that knows how to solve problem, and there are architects that defines the general solution, engineer that make sure that the rules and all the implementation details are followed in the correct way, and plus of course we have people that works on that. Of course, for example, we also have a generic data warehouse pattern, like we have the definition of snapshot and transaction table, fact table. We also created a new definition that is also available in on Wikipedia, and we will discuss about that again in detail in Seattle, is the temporal snapshot fact table. So we have created a lot of patterns that we can use and reuse. Of course, there are also specific SQL Server patterns that are specific to the SQL Server platform only. For example, the how to handle parallelism within integration services, how to be able to do incremental load using change tracking or change data capture.
David, if we could have a quick question. We've got a question
Yes.
from Nigel Harris here on, you recommended at least 2 SSIS packages.
Yeah.
How would you split the loading of staging, data warehouse and the data mart between 2 different solutions?
Yeah, well, the point is that we have 2 different solutions. So we have one that takes data from the source, let's say SAP or your preferred ERP system, and move it to the staging area, and that's it's only task. And we have another integration services solution that moves data from the staging to the data warehouse. The fact that a data mart exists may not be something that happens at the very beginning, because at the beginning, if we really evolve, we make the solution evolve, the data warehouse and the data mart are exactly the same. We have the concept of virtual data mart. So when the things become more complex, because let's say we have dozen of dimension and dozen of fact tables, and of course makes sense to create data mart out of data warehouse so that the end user will have a simplified version of the entire model, then at that point we will create a new integration services solution. So we start from 2, but following the idea that we have to be able to evolve, there is no limit to what we can do. So it's completely a good idea to, at some point, decide to split the loading of the data warehouse and create a spin-off, actually, integration services solution dedicated to loading only the data mart. The idea is that nothing is fixed. That's the main point I would like to underline this presentation. We must embrace change, so we must be ready to change every time. Okay, I hope this answered the question. Of course, being able to change so quickly means that we should be able to avoid all the work that has low value, because if we change so quickly, if we are not able to automate anything, we have to do anything manually. This means that the cost of the solution, instead of being lower, they will rise. And of course, we don't want this to happen. So we want to be able to have the people thinking and do the added value work and leave the machine what I call the monkey work, so the repetitive work, the work that has no value in my eyes. And what is this zero value work, and why we should invest in automation? But first of all, invest in automation, it's quite an easy answer, because it helps to reduce costs and it helps to embrace changes, because of course the faster we can modify something, the faster we can sustain some change requirement that comes from the business. Of course, nothing has to work at like all or nothing. We just have to use the usual rule of 80-20, where it makes sense to automate probably up to 80% of the BI solution and leave 20 to do it manually, because it's not, it would not be cost effective. As this very nice chart shows, it makes sense to automate something only when we do that something. Where is my pointer? I just lost the mouse pointer, so let's try to do that. Okay, it works. So we need to be able to automate something only the number of iteration that we have to do this work again and again. It's so high that it makes sense to stop at some point, stop delivering value, do something that automate the generation of value, and then do it again and again. So, of course, this makes sense, for example, for creating dimension package, for loading a fact table. Loading a fact table and loading a dimension should be something that should be completely automated. And I can show you how to do that, because there is no value in loading a dimension. The value is in extracting the data and transforming it such in a way that it can fit into a dimension. But loading the dimension itself is something boring, prone to errors, and that we should be completely able to automate. And in fact, this is the fact that we do faster development is actually not the main point why we should invest in automation. We should invest in automation because we will have less bugs. And this is something that is related to the trust that we have inherent in data warehouse. So less bugs means that the people will trust data warehouse more and more. And of course, quality, the solution quality will be consistent throughout the whole product, because if we have to be able to scale out our team, we cannot afford to have the quality of the product totally dependent on the experience of the people working on it. We need to have tools to be able and to be sure that anyone, even the most junior people, can create a slowly changing dimension type 2 package perfectly. Not almost correctly, perfectly, because this is what the end user expects, to have a dimension always correct. So the high-level vision is that we have all the data coming from OLTP sources. We have an ETL process, one of those two integration services project I mentioned before, and this is something that moves the data from the sources to the staging. This is what we call a technical process. A technical process is something that should be completely automated. There is no value in taking a data from a table in SAP and move it into our staging, because when we do this process, we only want to offload data from the source as fast as possible in order to offload the work from the source and start to crunch data within a safe place that is the staging area. So we would like to have the technical process completely created by some automation tool. Once we have all the data from any source stored in our staging area, then we will crunch the data. And this is what we call the business process, something that probably cannot be automated because it relies on business rules that are specific to that solution. But once we have came up with a solution that takes customer data and product data and anything else and turns it into something that is very similar to a dimension, then we just have to take this data, so this processes data, and move it into the data warehouse. Again, this is a technical process. There is no value in loading a fact table or a dimension. We should be able to automate at 100% this process. So the idea is that, first of all, we can, as you have seen in the slide, create different team, different project to handle the different situation, and they can work in parallel. Plus, we are isolating all the solutions, so I'm going back from the start again. So we are isolating the movement from the data from the source to the staging, the working on the data, the processing of the data, and the movement of the data from the staging to the data warehouse in 2 or 3 different ways. And again, this will help us to make sure that if we have to change something in data warehouse, maybe we don't have to necessarily act also on the source. We are trying to isolate the point where we have to work if something changes. And so, following this idea, the ETL phases, specifically the E phase, or the extract phase, and the load phase, should be very simple, easy and straightforward, completely automated, and completely reusable. The way we load a slowly changing dimension, it's always the same and is not related to the data the dimension contains. Loading a product dimension or loading a customer dimension is actually the same thing. Only the column names changes. But the idea, the pattern applied is exactly the same. So this drives me to say that the E and the L phase have almost 0 value in a data warehouse solution. So they should be done in the most fast and economic way. So this means that we have to automate them as much as we can. How we can automate such steps? Well, first of all, we have the Microsoft platform at our hands, and we must consider that Microsoft doesn't really create products, in my opinion. They create platform. Integration services is a product, but is also a platform. It has APIs you can use to create a package on the fly. We have SMO to manage the creation of tables, views, storage procedures, and whatever. Not only that, there is also a really interesting player on the market that is called BIML, the BI markup language, that has been created by a company called Verigence. It is available to everyone for free through a probably well-known tool called Bits Helper, that is a plugin for Visual Studio. And of course, also Verigence provides a specific integrated environment for this language, but actually is free to use. And this language can help us to create package on the fly in just 1 second. I will show a demo of that so you can get the idea of what I mean. Of course, how we can automate the creation of everything? Well, one thing that, in my opinion, lacks in the Microsoft platform is a good storage for metadata. For example, it will be nice to have somewhere in our BI solution to store information about the source table, where should be put in the staging area, how the dimension is loaded from which source column, so that all of this information that actually are usually on our mind can be written somewhere, and then if we have the right automation tool, we can simply say, okay, recreate the customer dimension because we have added a new attribute. And the system does it for us. So in order to fix the problem of not having a specific storage for metadata, we can just resort to the usual stuff we use, like tables or extended properties that lives inside SQL Server. So that's why we also create a database with the postfix MD, that stands for metadata, where we hold all the information about, for example, how we would like to load a table in a full way, in an incremental load, using change tracking, without using change tracking, and so on. And of course, if we are able to change so quickly and make change and bring changes inside new features inside our solution so quickly, how we can be sure that we don't introduce bug or we don't change some data that needs some special treatment, and maybe we don't have the information about that special treatment because has been created by another guys in our team. So how we can be sure not to break something when we change a storage procedure or a view or whatever? Well, unit testing or in general testing is surely mandatory in any agile solution, because we have to test the data before delivering it. So just because if data is like water, we can simply give it to the end user, because if they drink it, well, they will simply lose the trust in our data warehouse, and that would be an epic fail. They would have spent thousands and thousands of euros or dollars in something that they won't trust anymore, and then they will use something else to take decisions. So the main task of our data warehouse would fail. Of course, this is a really young discipline in data warehousing and BI. So there are not a lot of tools around the web in order to perform tests. And of course, all of these tools were not made to test data. So we have to come up with a solution with existing tools, borrowing them from the development field, and trying to make them work within the BI solution. What we should test? Well, for example, we have to create and to ask user to use some reference data. Like, for example, we can use as a reference data the total invoiced amount in January 2012 that in 2014 should never change. So we can be sure that once we reload everything or apply new logic to the way we load data, that amount won't change, because this will give us the proof that we haven't introduced bugs. This validated data will, of course, become a reference value, so we will have to store the reference data somewhere else. In the example I will show to you would be an XML file. But of course, it will be nice if someone from the big vendors came up with a specific solution to test the data in a BI solution, holding data in a specific database or something like that. Anyway, of course, right now we don't have this product, so we have to figure out ourselves how to do that. And so we simply store the reference data and execute some reference query against this reference data each time we add or change something to our solution. There are some tools that can help us on this task. For example, I will show you NUnit. That is a tool that is actually used in the development field with some extension. There are two extensions right now, bi.quality or MBI. It allows us to test data, not only code. And what we should test? Well, we discovered in the last year that there are at least 3-4 typical tests that one should make. So aggregated result. Aggregated result, I mean like the sample I made before, the invoiced amount of January 2012. So we have an idea if we broke that piece of logic or not. Some specific result to some special rule. It happens every time that for the most fantastious region, the customer decide that if the amount is the amount of the invoice is 0.001, this means that is a special invoice that must be handled in some special way. They did this, for example, because their ERP didn't allow them to correctly handle a discount. A special discount that they were doing from some special customer, so they came up with a solution that using a specific value in the specific amount of the invoice would make them know that this was a specific discount. So we have to implement the logic in order to deal with that within the data warehouse, and of course, so all these exceptional rules must be tested. Last test we found it's really important to do is as soon as you deliver your solution, of course, people will discover that they forgot to tell you about another specific rule, or the rule that they thought that it was correct is not really correct because they discovered a new and better rule. So they will open bugs or fix or tickets or whatever using their ticketing system. And it's really important as soon as you fix that issue to create a test that makes sure that for all the life of the data warehouse there will be no regression on that fix. This is really, really similar to what happens in application development. And at the end, if I should describe a complete Agile solution, this is what happens. So we take data from the source, extract it, and put into the staging area. Then, if we really want, we can store all the data also in our big data solution, just not to discard anything. Then we cleanse the data, standardize it, and transform it to turn the data into information. And then we store into dimension and facts. Depending on the size of the data warehouse, we have to create a data mart physically, so another database, a virtual data mart that is nothing more than a views built directly on the data warehouse, or specific structure like tabular models, cube, and whatever. This process is iterative, so it gets executed many times during a release cycle. That could be a month or a week or 3 months, depending on the size of the company you are working for. So before going to the question, I would simply like in just a couple of minutes to show you how easy can be to, for example, load a staging area just from the sources. So what this is a real scenario, what we actually do every day. So as you can see, I have created Adaptive BI 2.0 this is the name of the Agile methodology we use inside SoloQ Italy, and we have all the database I told you before. Actually, we have an additional database that we will discuss again in the Seattle workshop, where there will be much more time, which contains views that allows us to access the source data. So here, for example, I'm creating all the views that allows me to access SAP or Oracle or whatever ERP I have in-house. So, for example, from here I extract simply the information I need. Nothing, it's really nothing complex. So we simply expose through a view all the data we need from the source. Once we have done this, so we have created all the view in a BI schema within the helper database with a VW underscore prefix, we load the data into a metadata database that holds, in this simple example, just the two tables, the extract phase table and the load phase table. And the extract phase is what I'm interested into right now, and simply tells to our system, look, the data that is coming from the person view should be put in a table called destination person, and I would like to load it using a full load, is active for load. It should be created automatically for me, and the source type is a view. Of course, in real world scenario, source type could be stored procedure, or function, or other stuff. Once I did that, I can simply switch to Visual Studio, where I have installed my Bits Helper add-in, and this is the page of the Codeplex website where you can download it. And it will give some additional function to Visual Studio. The most interesting one is the ability to use BIML in order to describe how I would like my package to be. So without diving too much into BIML, we will discuss about that really more deeply in Seattle. Here I define that in my package I want to have some connection. I want to have a execute SQL task that in this case truncate a sample table, in this case a fact table, that I want to have a spatial transformation, a specific transformation, a data pump transformation on data flow. My data flow should take the data from a view. So I'm describing the package just using XML, simplified XML, I would say. And this will be really nothing exceptional if I couldn't turn this into a script. A script is something that allows me to say, okay, execute this query that extract all the views from my metadata database, and for each view, so for each of the source view I wrote in my metadata table, create a package for me. So in order to load a new table, I simply have to choose the pattern, full, partitioned, differential, incremental, whatever I think it's worth for that table, and create a script with Bmol, and then simply do something as easy as create integration services packages. Bmol will go to my, the script of the Bmol I created will go to my metadata table, gather all the information needed, and then will create all the package for me. Generate package, oh, of course, yes, is that I took the wrong example. Here it is. So because I want to, in this demo, I just want to load the staging, so I haven't prepared the demo for the fetchable load. Here it is, all the package created for me in just how much? 1 second, 2 seconds, whatever. And of course, in this case, I'm only using the full load just to make it easier, just for the sake of the demo. And here it is. He put the correct source with the correct query. I'm also putting here, just as an example, the fact that I want to count rows that are sent to the destination. So for example, I can also log them. and create a dashboard that tells me how many rows has been sent to the staging, how many rows has been discarded. Because of course, the beauty of this is that once we have defined the pattern that we want to use in our company, it's really easy for anyone to simply apply it to the table that we have to load or reload or whatever. Last thing before leaving some time for question is I just want to show you how unit testing can be done, and it's really easy. One, we have loaded our data warehouse, we have created all the table and whatever. We just have to install a unit, and we have to define, there is a specific tool for that, we have to define a query, and for example, here it is. For example, here I have created a query that says that the customer 9500 should have an expected amount of rows or something like that. And let me show you the query. These are the files that defines the test. So are 4 files that are created automatically by the system. And the query is nothing more than the reference query of our data. So nothing complex here. Plus, this system stores the data into an XML file that says, okay, this is the data I would expect. So I would expect a customer ID that is 992, a person ID that is 9500, and so on. So this is the result we expect to have. In this case, I have executed the query. The results are not the expected one, so the test phase, and I know that I probably have to wait before delivering the solution to the customer, because it may work from a technical point of view. So I may be able to load the table, but probably I'm putting inside the wrong data. So I just, at the end of the presentation, I should have at least gave you an idea of how an agile methodology should be put in place. So there are no specific tools. This is really important. There are no specific tool that will turn your solution into an agile one. It's a methodology. It's a mindset. It's a way of working. So this is really, really important to get. There are things that can help on that, but it's nothing that can be bought as a product. It's a methodology. Now, questions?
Okay, thank you very much, David. We do have a couple of questions. First one is, how do you handle downtime when large tables require changes due to a requirements change?
The end time of defining of what? The expected end time of developing the change?
I think it's if you need to drop a table and recreate it, repopulate it, etc. How do you handle the downtime in the data warehouse when you're going through that release process?
Okay, so that will put on the table also the hardware part of data warehouse. Just to give you an idea, with a fast track machine, that is the reference architecture for data warehouse, you can reload the table with speed of 10 gigabytes per second. So it should be fast enough to reload everything if you really need to do that. Of course, if we have to introduce a change for only, let's say, 3 rows in our fact table, in that case, it will make sense to delete the rows and insert them. It depends really on how big is the change we have to make. There is no fixed rule. But for a data warehouse that is less than 100 gigabytes, and if we have the correct hardware, that, by the way, doesn't cost more than an not correct hardware. We just have to buy the correct hardware so that it is specifically done for data warehousing. And if you can load a table at, let's say, 5 or 10 gigabytes per second, it's really not a problem reloading data warehouse. Just to give you an idea, right now we are developing data warehouse for a really big company in the printer and projector field, and we can reload all the data warehouse that is quite big in only 40 minutes. So if you can reload an entire data warehouse in 40 minutes, this is not really a problem.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, does going down the BIML route mean that you're deviating from the Microsoft platform, or can we look at it as an extension of integration services functionality?
Well, luckily it is really, really well integrated with the Microsoft platform. Of course, it's something as a third-party tool, but it's integrated with Visual Studio. Plus, it generates package just like as you would do, creating them directly to the Integration Services API without going through Beamol. So Beamol is just an accelerator, in my opinion. Of course, it's created by a company that is not Microsoft, but right now Microsoft doesn't offer anything similar. So the fact that it allows me to create so many packages so quickly, well, for now is something more important than the fact that is Microsoft doing it or not.
So we can think of it as similar to Bid's Helper. It's another tool to help us get more out of the Microsoft solution.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then another question of, do you have a reference with more information about the testing tools that you presented? Or could you provide a link to
I will have a session on the tools, specific on that tools at PASS. Actually, the reference here, there are only, I can switch to the virtual machine and go over the website, and here it is. It is one, the simplest of the, there are two actually, two tools on the market actually, and they are both free. And the simplest one is this one. It is also the oldest one, and it's called BI Quality. And is an addition to an unit. So one has to download a unit, install a unit, and then use this. Another one is much more complex, but much more powerful. It's called NBI, is always on complex, and both this tool plus other tools like T-SQL test, SYS tests will be the main topic of my session, so not the workshop, but the regular session at SQL Pass.
Okay, great. We are out of time. We do have one more question if you can answer very, very quickly.
Sure. Okay, I'll try.
Is Agile BI feasible since we have most frequent changes while in development? How do you estimate the burn down chart? Is it an easy process or is it highly complex? There's a quick answer to this.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a quick answer. The quick answer is that also the management should change the way in which they expect to have the answer on this. So the point is we will deliver every week, so the management will know what we can deliver each week. So it's not a point of I want this, how much it takes to do that, but if I deliver every week, what I can put in every week is exactly the opposite way of thinking. Of course, it's not easy to make sure that the development and management share the same vision. So usually right now I always had to find a way of balancing this, and unfortunately it's much more complex answer than this one, I fear.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the short answer there. Could you go back to the slides, please, David?
Sure.
That's right.
And here it is. So question I will. Oh, here. Yeah, I forgot about the slides I'm showing right now. So these are the other section.
So if you like what you heard here, David will also be presenting at the PASS Summit 2014 with a general session, Agile BI, unit testing and continuous integration, and then the full version of the session you've just seen at a full-day pre-conference, Agile Data Warehousing start to finish at PASS Summit as well. And don't forget to use the discount code 24HOP14 to save $200 on PASS Summit registration. The next session coming up is Alberto Ferrari with DAX formulas in action. So that should be starting in a couple of minutes. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much for David for presenting this session.
Thank you too for your support.
Always a pleasure, and enjoy the rest of 24 hours of PASS. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye to everyone. And thank you, Alex, again.